A top lane matchup that Reignover had pinpointed there is what I kind of want to start with our discussion here, because I find it very odd that we saw the maokai picked blind, essentially blind. You see the Lulu flex, but maokai blind picked, allowing Huni to pick whatever he wants into it. He was very happy to pick up that Ekko.
I hated that. I don't know why you would pick the maokai before Alistar and then last pick your support. You know Adrian's champion pool is pretty much Janna, Soraka, Alistar. You could pick the Alistar there and you're comfortable with playing that into Janna and Soraka both, and then counter pick top. You don't want to give Huni a counter pick in that top lane. If you have red side, use it to counter pick Huni. Like, that's pretty much my biggest advice for playing against Immortals, because he's so flexible. His champion pool, he plays things other people aren't playing just to win the lane.
Right, and then curiously, we see the maokai picked. It's got a lot of gank assistance, and yet Dardoch essentially sacrificed his entire top side of the map, his jungle included, to make all of his efforts in the bot lane, none of which really came to anything.
I also don't know how much choice Dardoch had in the matter.
That's true.
Because Reignover's always one step ahead of him. He was chasing him through the jungle again and again. Listening to that interview from Reignover is really interesting, because I love watching efficient junglers talk, because they always have a very logical progression of things, and that needs to happen in order to stay ahead of someone in the jungler. Because Reignover never has hesitation. Once he got the first cycle of the top side of Dardoch's jungle, he was always there on the respawn of the camps. So unless Dardoch is there with an extra person, he's going to continue to lose those camps. And once Reignover got hold, he never let go.
And it was also a winning matchup in top lane for Huni. So even if you go in a 2-on-2 skirmish, there is a little bit of an advantage for Huni in the top lane already. But also that bot lane, I want to talk about that because Matt had opportunities to make plays. They got level 2 first. They got 3 summoner spells out of the bottom lane of Immortals in trade for Ignite. And then Dardoch came bottom. There was an opportunity to flash, and Matt didn't take it. And Dardoch thought he was going to, and that could have been the start of a snowball for the bottom lane. But then that ended up costing Dardoch more and more and more from the top side of this jungle.
You can see it on their faces, too. There was that moment of, that was a mistake that they've made, and already they're starting to get into their heads a little bit. And then, as you mentioned, Jat, meantime, on the opposite side of the map, Reignover starting that thing. And to your point, 4 times within the first 13 minutes did Reignover clear that red side jungle without Dardoch getting a single camp. So the experience advantage, along with the CS advantage that he's creating there, was just astronomical.
And that was the biggest difference, because eventually the bottom lane actually did get a kill, even though Dardoch didn't pick up an assist on it. But by that point, since Elise visited bottom 4 times, Reignover visited top 4 times, but there was a 50 CS difference, because Dardoch never had enough pressure to move into Reignover's jungle because of better ward coverage and just better map presence overall, utilizing that Rek'sai ultimate time and time again to get top lane, because they could never even clear the tunnels.
I didn't understand that. The tunnels are sitting there, and there's also that part where FeniX saw where Reignover was in the jungle, and then Reignover just walks straight top and ganks Lourlo, and they couldn't do anything about it. And then the next time he comes in, they just go for a tower dive. So the way that they're playing the top side of the map on Immortals just seemed like Liquid was thrown for a loop, and they didn't even seem to be on the same page at all. Where the ganks were going, who they were allocating resources to, and even communicating.
Right, but both teams, though, they did put focus into some part of the map, right? Team Liquid did get ahead in the bot lane. They were playing very well in the 2v2, and Dardoch did sit there for quite a bit of time applying pressure. Then we arrived at about 17 minutes into the game, the really big explosive team fight, long team fight too. 17 minutes in, we'll pull that up onto your screen, starts in the river around the Baron Pit, ends up being a 5-for-2 in favor of Immortals. But let's try and make sense of this one.
Yeah, both teams were willing to throw down this game. That's why we saw standard lanes. That's why we saw this crazy team fight. But it started a little bit sloppy, as Kobe said during the cast, with Huni having a poor teleport in. But Immortals knew they already had a lead, and Reignover knew he was going to make a play. It was nice peeling by Matt, and Adrian did an even better job kind of like counter-peeling Matt so they could finish him off. And then this is where the fight turns. It's very hard to run away from Lulu, and WildTurtle knew he was at full health. And I think at this point, he's just showing off with how many times he can flash and use abilities forward and still not die. And at the very end of this fight, I would say some decent-sized misplays by Team Liquid. Piglet can't take him because Adrian wasn't dead. That was super key. And FeniX needed to just get out of there where he gets tagged by the last
but it's very close. I mean, it shows you how close this game was up to this point, that's the remaining health on the side of Immortals here. But what you have to remember as well, there was about a 2K-ish gold lead in favor of Immortals from those early game moves that we had talked about from Reignover that probably gave them the item edge, stats advantage they needed to win that fight.
Yeah, but some of the solo laners were actually ahead. I think FeniX had a CS advantage for a large portion of the game, and the bottom lane as well. Piglet was ahead, but they played that fight when they were kiting backwards, and Matt decides to peel instead of jump into Huni. They aren't able to kill Huni during the CC chain, and then that creates this chain of events where they used so much on one guy who got away that they have to kite backwards. And then that last moment where I'm sitting there going, well, why isn't FeniX helping Piglet out? Well, he doesn't want to go into choke point against a Caitlyn, right? So there's a lot of things that are going back and forth in that fight that you could probably watch it 3 times and just see something new every time.
I think specifically playing against Immortals, you more clearly see teams' indecisiveness because it doesn't exist on Immortals. So as soon as it happens, it's totally out of place. And Immortals always decisive, always fast.
I was about to say, and plenty of decisiveness on the side of Immortals. Reignover kind of leading the charge in this game, taking advantage of Dardoch in the jungle. Coming up next, 2 mid lane stars face off as Jensen and the rest of Cloud9 battle GBM and Energy Esports. Stick around. We'll be